Okay, sounds good.
So, Angela, I'm so glad you're here today on 50 Tastes of Grey. Welcome.
Thank you. I think it's all my pleasure because I was reading all about you and I'm just like, I am not worthy to be here. So I
Oh,
am so happy to meet you today.
I'm just going to shut up and let you talk because that feels good.
Okay, you are an amazing person.
Angela, you've really made a movement in the self-help space, haven't you?
Yes, I have. I hope the momentum continues.
Yeah. How long have you been infatuated with the subject of your book? Let's just put it that way.
Um, Probably forever of
Uh-huh.
my entire living memory. And I did go into the reasons why in the first chapter of the book, which you
Mm-hmm.
know all about.
Was hilarious. I loved your book, and tell everybody the title of it.
Okay, the title is Using Number Two to Get to Number One.
And number two and number one are references that I think everybody knows about.
Yeah, except the number one doesn't refer to the number one, it refers to the personal number one. So that's the whole self help part of it, is that we're using who to learn about how to be our best self.
So you began your career as an engineer, and have you shifted into writing hilarious books about self-help, or are you still doing the engineering stuff?
I am not officially doing the engineering stuff, but I still have a professional designation because I worked hard for that. So it's really hard to give it up. But thankfully, they have a designation of non practicing right now, so I can keep my designation as a non practicing engineer. The reason why I stopped was because I moved back home where they don't do what I was doing. And I moved back home for the family to raise them in the same acreage that I grew up in, just outside Saskatoon in Canada. And so I knew I had to reinvent myself. And here we are.
So you being a Canadian, you must accept my warm apology from all of us good Americans who love Canada, and we don't take any responsibility for any of the BS that's been going on.
Well, I have total sympathy for you, and you are welcome anytime.
When you were growing up, was the word shit a big part of your vernacular?
No, it wasn't. And all of this undercurrent of number two was just sort of running in the background. And, just to give some stories away, it was in our acreage, we have a septic tank. And for some reason, it kept getting plugged up. And my dad was just livid at all of us, saying, "You guys are using too much toilet paper." And I was the diligent, really good girl. And I'm going, I'm really trying to use just as much as I need. But he would sort of listen, and my siblings would kind of hit the toilet roll, like those cats that hit the toilet roll. And they told me afterwards they're just trying to find the end. But my dad took it as they're just taking reams of toilet paper off, and that's why our septic tank kept getting plugged up. So he decided he's going to ration our toilet paper. And so it was one square for number one and two squares for number two. And that became kind of a little pervasive trauma, if you would say. I'm not traumatized by it, but I am definitely affected by it because it made me think about it maybe a little too much. Because as a kid, you don't really plan when you've got to go. It just, you get the feeling and then you got to go. But then if you've got to
Right.
find your dad on a 10-acre lot who's landscaping God knows where, you've got to think about it in advance, and sometimes it doesn't work. So maybe that kind of caused me to think about it a little too much.
That's funny. A lot of people complain that their parents would always talk about the money issue, but your dad was talking about a septic tank issue. So it wasn't expense. It was more of a like, we need the septic tank to be able to consider going forward with our lives.
That's right. Yeah. Well, money was a thing too.
A few years back, maybe several years back, Sheryl Crow, the musician, came out, and I think all she's famous for now is saying that she used one square of toilet paper when she went, and like that traumatized me, and has become kind of an inside family joke. I mean, how could anybody get one square? That's ridiculous. You can never do that. Maybe if you're a little teeny person, it's possible, but not for a regular person, right? I mean, you just like roll it around your hand and like you take care of business, right?
I know. And that's how our whole that episode ended was my mom was they had an argument and she said, "You don't understand female anatomy if this is what you're giving us." Because he also rationed for her. He was the keeper of the holy toilet roll. So one roll in his pocket, and I don't know where the rest of the pack went, but I
Well,
don't know.
you
I
talk.
actually never searched for it. Now that you mentioned it, I never searched for it.
Let's give him a call.
Yeah, exactly.
So, what a controlling dude.
Well, kind of, but also you can understand if the septic tank keeps getting plugged up, there's got to be an issue. So I
Right.
don't even know how we got to the bottom of that. It's all this childhood stories gone awry that never came to closure.
Right. Because of dad's behavior throughout your life and rationing toilet paper for not only the kids, but mom too, this kind of like made you what, a little bit more comfortable with bodily functions or humor related to that?
I think it just put in my mind the whole digestive system. And there's so many parallels to life. So as I was going through life, it was one of those, everyone gets it. You tell a joke about the digestive system, everyone gets it. You've had the runs before. I'm just going to beg to guess, that you have. And probably the queen has as well. We can all relate on a certain gut issue, gut level. So I love it when you go into a conversation and no one is left out. Because you know how it feels when you're in a conversation and you have no clue what they're talking about. Maybe people went on holiday to Austria and a great time, and it's just like a nice story, but you don't really feel it. But when you talk about gut stuff, everyone gets it on a very visceral level. So it's
Oh,
a
yeah.
really good connector.
So tell me, now that you've become the poop philosopher, give us a for instance about going from number one to number two.
Okay. Well, there's what is crazy about my book is that there's so many concepts in it. There's probably a book written on every little paragraph that I've got in there. The chapter that was hardest for me to write for some reason was the one on momentum. And for me, momentum is everything. And I think it was hard to write because I just wanted to get it right, which, there you go, perfectionism. There is no perfect. But
Right.
momentum, when you put the food in your mouth and it goes down your gullet into your stomach, there is like no stopping it. Something's got to happen. You're going to get rid of it soon, right? So that's the way I want people to really deal with their goals is you start feeding yourself the thoughts and start doing the actions that go towards that goal. And at some point, the momentum is going to pick up that you're going to get there. And that's one thing that I just want people to remember is like feed yourself with the good stuff, AKA the good thoughts. And what you're going for is going to show up, in that
So
metaphorical poop kind of way. You're going to have a product at the end of it. So just make sure you're putting in the right stuff.
you cited momentum as being some of your strongest focus. Does that also include ability and quality of work as well and being able to put one foot in front of the other?
Well, and that's another great thing about what the digestive system reminds us is that every day is a new day. And if you're maybe when you're a teenage boy, maybe now, I don't know about men in general, but they seem to go a little more often than women do. So, but every time you go is a new opportunity to get it right. So whether or not you make a mistake one day, it's okay because tomorrow you can do it again. And it's kind of the really nice metaphor. Like, yeah, today maybe my number two wasn't great, but maybe I'm not eating enough fiber or drinking enough water. I can try again tomorrow. And there's always, you learn from it, but you always can do it again. And that's what we have to remember about life is that, you're going to make mistakes. But do you think about your poo after you flush it? No, just let it go and try
Hmm.
again.
That's kind of a good metaphor, isn't it?
It is. It's perfect. It just hits everything.
How many kids do you have?
I have three beautiful humans.
And what do these three beautiful humans think about mommy, who's written a book about utilizing poo and its associations to getting better in life?
They think it's fantastic. And, I had the concept in my mind decades ago. I had the title over 20 years ago, and I just didn't get to writing it because life happened. I started having kids, and just it was always in the back of my mind, like I should do this someday. But everything has its perfect timing because all of my kids have added a few stories within the book, and it would be less rich without them because children are pure joy, not to the parents all the time, but they experience pure joy most of the time. And we somehow lose that as adults. And so some of their first jokes are toilet jokes. They start to experience little toots and gurgles here and there, and it's hilarious. And yet we as adults tend to silence them.
I never grew
And
out of it.
well, good. I'm glad to hear this. But there's a lot of people who are just like, don't talk about that. That's potty humor. That's not allowed here. But how would you feel if that was your only world? So you came back from work and you start telling your wife about or your partner about what happened, and they say, no, that's not appropriate. When you're a kid, that's like the funnest part of your day. Like, oh, I accidentally farted at school, and you want to tell someone, and if you're told, that's not appropriate, you start to actually, hold yourself back from being who you truly are. So there you go. Another metaphor for you.
There's so
Analogy.
many funny references to when you think about it. It's like, personally, if I think about it, I think about the time Penny, when we were like 8 years old, he jumped up to get a frisbee that was caught in the tree, and he ripped one when he jumped up to get the frisbee, and it's something that stayed with me for 50 years. you know,
Exactly. Exactly.
Everybody's
All
got
those things
those.
are hilarious.
Yeah, it's funny that everybody has that same kind of reference, and yet it's kind of like tucked under the table where people don't want to talk about it because it's just that embarrassing to some.
Yeah. But I think I've seen, when Instagram first came out, everyone's posting all these beautiful pictures. Everyone's got their bodies at perfect angles and the sunset is the perfect color. And now I think we're moving towards a little more authenticity. Like, thank you for the beauty. Now we know what's available, what's possible, but also thank you for the authenticity. Like when people accidentally toot, or, kids, when there's so many stories about just being real. And that's getting a lot of traction now, too, is like, please be real with me. And that's why I think this is a perfect time for a book like this.
Hold up your book, Angela, please, and tell me what people on social media have said about using number two to get to number one.
What did people on social media say? Well,
Yeah.
I just got a review yesterday, actually,
Uh-huh.
and the guy said, is it okay to start this review saying I didn't want to like this book? And yeah, because it is an awkward subject, but I just want, another good metaphor is like, if it's real, let's be real. Let's talk about it. Let's learn about it. I had a story in there about when we share even these embarrassing things, sometimes it can help someone else. So when I was in university, I went on a mapping course, and if I don't drink a lot, but a friend of mine, they all the guys went out to the bar, and he was telling me the story the next morning, and he said, yeah, I was in the bar, and then suddenly I had that feeling that I was going to barf, and I ran outside, and he barfed, right? And I said, wait, what is that feeling? And he goes, well, it's just like your mouth just fills with saliva, like your body's lubricating the way out, and then you got to go. So it's like, okay, well, thank you. And then a few months later, I was getting married and on the cruise ship of our honeymoon. And I am not a good boat person, but I've never been on a cruise before. So we're sitting in the eating cabin, and the boat hasn't even left. Like we're just like slowly listing while we're docked. And I'm sitting there talking to my husband, not feeling that well. And then suddenly there's that saliva. And I'm going, be right back. But if my friend hadn't told me about that, my husband probably would be filled with projectile vomit.
Right, right.
Excuse that.
The floodgates were open at that point.
But
Now I
anyway,
have
to
to,
that day, I'm just
yeah,
really thankful to my friend for telling me the telltale signs that you're just about to puke.
I have to reference what we were talking about earlier when you said your dad used to ration out the toilet paper. Is that something you always refer to every single time, maybe multiple times a day when you're doing your
Every
business?
single time.
Oh,
And unfortunately, my dad has passed now, but I'm just, every single time I pull out my toilet paper, I go, sorry, dad, I gotta move, I gotta use more.
so do you use it to excess now because of all those years that dad kept you down?
Absolutely not. I am not a waster. I use just enough. That's does the job, but that's comfortable. But it is more than two squares for number two.
Of course, has to be. So how long have you been in the process of writing this book and now pitching it and selling it as an author?
Well, I guess I've been collecting stories for decades, and I started writing probably in when the pandemic hit. I thought now it's time to actually get this book done. So I would write stories, and then I got caught up in something else. I got caught up in learning how to self publish. So I was self publishing a bunch of other fiction stuff. And I guess, yeah, 2 years of doing that was amazingly fun. But then I went, oh, wait a minute. I took this course in order to publish my own book. So this last Christmas, I said, this is the goal for 2025. And I chose May because it's Gut Health Month. And I chose the 20th because every big book, I don't know if you've seen, releases on a Tuesday. So I thought, well, I'll try it. I'll pick a Tuesday. The first and second, I know I'm going to be panicking because I'm kind of a last minute person. So if I do the third week, that sounds better than just trying to squeeze it in on the last week. So May 20th it was, and I set that deadline for myself and achieved it. So
So
super
it's
happy
brand
about that.
new. And thanks for using that
Yeah.
squeezed it out reference because that works.
See, you are tainted now forever.
I am, and not to say that I wasn't prior, but this whole thing about the being a self-published author is very difficult for a lot of people to get their minds around because they think, okay, I'm an author, and how do I sell it down the line? When you become a self-published author, it's like opening up a brand new business that requires a lot of time and devotion and dedication. Have you found that to be a difficult part of the writing experience or author experience?
Yeah, it's very interesting. And the course that I took to teach me how to self-publish fiction books, that was just unbelievably valuable in terms of showing me it's not about writing a good book, it's about marketing. Because there's a lot of bad books who got really good marketing. And if you sell, a few million people a book, then that's pretty awesome, right? But you
Hmm.
can have an amazing book, but no one knows about it, and then you won't sell any. So it's marketing is, I say, 80% of actually getting it out there.
Right.
So yeah, you think writing it is hard, but now you've got to market it, or you're writing it for another reason. Maybe there's a lot of people who want to write their memoirs just to give it to their family.
Hmm.
That's also really valid. And then you don't have to do the huge marketing effort, but it is a huge job. And part of marketing nonfiction is doing this, is talking to people like you who have a wonderful show that I'm proud to be part of. And thank you for having me. So, it's just a process. But now that I have this physical asset, I could do this for a long time. I can create new business ventures from it. So I'm looking
Oh,
forward to that.
well, the thing that I think that you've got here, Angela, although your thoughts and your philosophies are solid, it's a hook. And the hook is very interesting premise and a really interesting title. And those things will help make your marketing efforts that much more valuable.
Yeah, and I do find that people are curious about the title. I do have some friends in Europe who didn't know what number two was, didn't know what number one and number two was. So that's maybe something to consider. but now they're going to know what it is. And there's, a piece of poop on the cover. So
Right.
maybe that's an indicator.
Yeah, yeah. You probably have to have for, different audiences from different countries, give them a little bit of backstory as to how that happened here in America, how we reference those words.
Actually, do you know the story behind that? Because I don't know if I do.
I don't actually. I didn't do that much research on that, but that would have been good.
Yeah, well, no, and now it makes me think I should do that. It's just something we've used in my house.
So when you go out with the girls, are you girls all like toilet humor types?
I wouldn't say particularly, but I think they know I'm probably going to bring it up at some point. But I do believe I do it tastefully. I don't, I'm not talking about poo, and I'm not actually asking people to explain their stuff to me, but I know the process of it. If something relates to it, then I can reference it and everyone will know what I mean.
Right. So it's not like when you're going out, you're saying, "So are you regular?" You're
Yeah,
not asking
no,
those kind
none
of
of that.
questions.
None of that. I think, and that's what I like when people who have read my book, they're like, it's not gross. There's a few moments where it's just kind of, okay, that might be gross, but I've seen it. They can relate. This is initially when I was writing, I was going to say in the foreword, it might not be a book you want to have for book club because maybe you don't want to share that kind of stuff. This
Hmm.
is just like the digestive system is so personal to you. Personal development is so personal because you can say you're doing all the right stuff, but only you know that you're maybe not. And the same with the digestive system. It's like, no, I am eating a really good sugar free diet. And you just snuck a cookie last night, but no one knows but you. So it's all about you. And, the magic of self development and self help is that it's all inside you and you don't need anything else but you and to release your magic.
I think they're
That's,
coming. I think they're coming at self help from this kind of angle. That humorous angle is a really smart way to go.
oh, thanks. But I also wanted not to be prescriptive in terms of this is how you do things because that's what I've seen in self-help is like you got to do it like me. You got to wake up super early. You do this and this and this before you get out of the door. And it's like that person has not had a sick child all night. That person, oh, by the way, they're divorced. Those kind of things is like sometimes it's not relatable to you. Sometimes it doesn't work for you. And that's what I want to also say in the book. This is not about anyone else but you. So you can look at other people for great ideas, but if it doesn't work for you, meh, don't feel bad about it. Don't feel bad that you don't belong to the early bird club, that kind of thing. You belong to you club. You are amazing just as you are. And as you go through your day, if there's something that bugs you, those are the things you have to work on to release because they usually come back to self esteem or fear. And it's just like, just lose that and be the amazing person that you are. And Matthew, when I was reading about you, I was like, this guy has just done stuff, and you've probably started doing things and then something else interested you and you followed it and you achieved something in it. And then that led to something else. And I think that's the beauty of the human story if we can do that because we like different things. And that's the biggest gift we can give to the world is to be yourself because you're forwarding, you're increasing this food world of yours and I wish I could eat something you've made, but that is a gift you've given to every mouth that has eaten your food. And, if I compared, I've basically just fed my family, but I've done other things, and so if we celebrate each other and the gifts we bring to the table, that's sort of my chapter 6, I think, on diversity. We all can't bring the same dish to potluck because that sucks.
That definitely sucks. And also, the person planning the potluck hasn't planned it properly to allow that to happen.
That's right. And if you remember the story, that's what my daughter's friend did not plan perfectly. She just said, bring whatever you want. And so everyone brought their favorite dessert. But when you've got too much sugar,
Right.
everyone was sick. So,
Big
you
mistake.
can have too much of a good thing. And then when you have too much of a good thing, it's not a good thing anymore.
That's
So
right.
humans need diversity, humans need change. The whole fun of life is the change. It's not the achieving of something. Like I had to ask you, how did you get to Hawaii?
It was a
Because that's
love
like
thing.
the love, oh, I see. But that is like the best place on the planet, I think. Like it's one of the most beautiful places. And so I mean, you were led there by love
Right.
and you've made the best of it.
Yeah, but you have to do that no matter where you are, right?
Well, some people don't. Some people live in regret or live in noticing everything that's not working.
Hmm.
And then you feel like crap all day long.
A couple of minutes ago, Angela, you brought up food and my background in it. So I have to ask you, what have you eaten today? And what is a typical meal when you're cooking for the family?
Oh, I actually haven't eaten a lot today yet. Um, I've just been running around this morning, but I like to eat more vegetables than meat. But I've got teenage boys who are carnivores, so I try to do quite balanced meals. One of our favorite things is, say, a lentil stew, a lentil coconut stew, which is coconut milk. Basically lentils, carrots, celery, tomatoes, and then a nice dollop of coconut milk and peas. And it's just a nice, comforting meal. But I love to just go to the supermarket and see what's on sale. And then I Google a recipe and I try something new. So
Okay.
unfortunately, sometimes I forget all the things that my family likes because I'm always trying something different. Our favorite probably is Vietnamese because it's so light and fresh. I'm ethnically Chinese, and I find I love all our banquets, for Chinese New Year and everything. But sometimes if you Chinese New Year is 2 weeks long, and so we eat out a lot, and after that it's just kind of like, give me a peanut butter sandwich, please, because it's just
Right.
so rich, it's so different, and like I said again, sometimes we like things that are different because it changes the normal, but after a while, sometimes you want to go back to what is comforting to you.
Exactly. What part of the world did you grow up in? Was it there in Canada?
It is, yeah. So even though I look Chinese, because both of my parents are Chinese, I am the worst Chinese representative that you could ask for. My
In what way?
I don't speak very well. My mom spoke a different dialect than my dad, so when they met at university, they just spoke English. And so I know the basics from my grandparents who didn't speak English, but unfortunately, yeah, just didn't get to know them that well because my Chinese wasn't that good. And now as I'm older, I'm trying to learn Mandarin because that's
Oh,
the Chinese of the world. But that Chinese is not spoken by my family. So I don't have anyone to practice with, except my daughter's learning now too. So we're learning together. Um, but yeah, and I said in the book, it just makes me perfectly Canadian. Due to my engineering experience, I lived in the Netherlands for 6 years, and then I also worked in Brunei, Darussalam, in Southeast Asia. So my best second language is Dutch because I had to work in the fields and give presentations to people who didn't speak English. So I learned Dutch, and then my the second best language, I guess, second language is French, just because I took it in school and I can get by fine in France. So, yeah, you look at me and I look Asian, but not a very good representation. But I'm a very
oh,
good representation of what it is to be Canadian.
right. Kind of a blending of a lot of different things.
Yeah, and a celebration of a lot of different cultures. And it's kind of fun to be able to put people, surprise people.
Angela, I'm curious how you went from being an engineer, which is that left brain thing, over now into authoring, which is that right brain thing. And how did you bridge the gap between the two?
I think I've been a fairly balanced person my whole life. I remember as a child, my desire when someone said, "What do you want to do when you grow up?" I would say, "I want to be a writer." And I remember that being my first proclamation, probably when I was 7. I loved books, I read voraciously. And then when I went through high school, I was just really good at math and science. I loved them. And I actually didn't know what engineering was. I was going to be an accountant. And it was in those days where you had those huge ledger books. Do you remember those big things? And I love writing neatly in little boxes. So for some dumb reason, that was my reason for wanting to be an accountant, was those big books. Thank God there was something that tweaked me in grade 12 to say, maybe you should go explore what you should really become. And I went and did an aptitude test and said, I love math, love science. And it spit out an architect or an engineer. And I was like, I didn't even know what an engineer was. And so after I did some research, I enrolled, and that was the best thing that ever happened to me. So some lucky star was looking out for me there. And I it was another childhood wish that I would travel when I worked. And you can't travel when you're an accountant as easily because there's so many different tax laws. But you can travel as an engineer because science is science is science. And so, yeah, that's one of my big something was looking out for me that day.
That's very cool. I always said the same thing about chefing or cooking. You can cook in every language depending on where you are at, right? So it
Yeah.
doesn't only have to be specific to an area.
And I hope you got the message from the book that cooking for others really is a love language. It's food, so many cultures, especially when you said, you don't have to speak the same language, but you give someone something beautiful to eat. And there's a connection right there. You've
Hmm.
probably watched people put something you've made into their mouth and, met their eyes. And it's just like, thank you. There's like a vibration that goes bigger than thank you. It's like, this is amazing and you are amazing,
Oh,
and
you're very
that's
sweet.
beautiful.
I think that everybody just wants their stuff, their personality, their business, their product, their art to connect, to hit the right audience. And
Yeah,
speaking of
for sure.
that, who is your demographic? Who is the reader of your book?
Yeah, well, initially, when you say you're supposed to choose a niche, and originally I was going, well, anyone that poops. But yeah, that's basically everyone. So to niche down, I guess it would be people who don't mind references to that. So quirky, I would I was actually really surprised because I thought maybe the audience would be a little older, but I've got so many early readers who said, "My teenager needs to read this." And I've got an 11-year-old girl reading it right now. So there's no bad swear words. I think I said shit a couple times, but it's not like outrageously bad because I'm not a big swearer. But yeah, so a lot of people are saying this is the life lessons I wish I knew 30 years ago. So I'm giving it to my kid who's graduating high school because it's an accessible subject. It's easy to read, lots of stories, no big words because I don't use big words. I talk in numbers usually. And I think also when you learn different languages, your base language becomes a little simpler. I don't know why, but, and I think because you're trying to talk to someone else and maybe English is the common language between you. And so you just use simpler words. So that was maybe a negative, positive. I don't know. It's just a thing that happened with my world travels, trying to communicate with people in different languages.
Someone once said, I don't use big words because diminutive ones will work just fine,
Yeah, that's perfect.
right? So, Angela, hold up the book again and tell everybody where we can get a hold of that.
Well, here's the book, and it's available, of course, on Amazon and wherever you can order books from. So I know some people who are not supporting Amazon these days. You can go to your local bookstore and order it. Every bookstore can bring it in, even Walmart.
Oh, that's very cool.
So if you have a local bookstore, I have a friend in Australia who has a tiny bookstore on his corner, and he said he could order it. It's worldwide distributed. The majority of my sales are through Amazon, and it's print on demand. So just order it.
Not like in the old days when
I
self-published
know.
authors, they had part of the deal was getting a
Garage
thousand
fulls.
books, right?
Yes. They got a garage full of books, and
Yeah,
you can't get rid of them. And then what do you do?
yeah,
Especially
exactly.
when burning books is not a thing to do.
Definitely not with you and me, that's for sure.
No, that just hurts my soul. But if it's a cold Canadian winter and all you got is a garage full of books, you might think about it.
That's right. Do you have a website, Angela?
I do. It's just www.angelajamieson.com.
Fantastic. And I'm supposing that Jameson is your married name. What was your
Yeah, so
maiden
that's
name?
another thing that
Uh-huh.
scares people. Like you see Angela Jameson, and then all of a sudden this Asian person pops up. Yes, that's my married name. My maiden name was Fung, Fung.
And probably like 20 million of those.
I guess. I don't know. Not too many. It's not like Chan or Lee. I like it
Oh,
when
yeah.
people always say to me, "Oh, do you know Mrs. Lee in Vancouver?" It's like, no.
Right, right.
There's a
I think
million.
that's universal, the Smiths and then all the
Yeah.
various different names of porters and all
What
that,
about
right?
Gray? Is that very popular?
I don't know at what level it is, but I haven't met a lot of Grays, although, probably I'll go and Google and see that it's like the most used name ever, but I'm not quite sure.
Well, if you go to my website, you'll also see that, my real focus is on relaxed productivity. So I try to help busy professionals like I was see the logic behind the softer sides of life and just chill out a little. So I've got a digital course called Relaxed Productivity. I also have a membership where we meet twice a month and we discuss everything on, I developed this way of thinking called inner engineering, and that's what we talk about, how people bring their problems and we talk them through. It's very mastermindy, and that's really kind of my focus has been for the last couple of years until I just decided to get this book out. And it does sort of fit in because it's just like have fun a little, relax, enjoy your life, and then let everyone else enjoy theirs too.
That's a great philosophy, and especially that you have techniques to go behind to support the philosophy. I think you're on your way for sure.
Yeah, so a lot of the inner engineering concepts are covered in using number two to get to number one.
Great. Well, Angela, thank you so much for hanging out with me today on 50 Tastes of Gray.
It's been so fun, and I just want to get myself to Hawaii to come and actually, share a drink with you, and we could probably gab for hours.
I could teach you how to hula dance.
Yes, and then you can also feed me good food.
That's right. Well, yeah, that always is first and foremost. It's
Okay.
unspoken.
Okay, good. I hope I wouldn't have to actually say it.
No, you wouldn't even have to ask for anything. It would just be there
Yay!
like
It'd
that.
just be there.
Well,
Amazing.
well, take care. We'll definitely stay in touch, Angela. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew, for having me. It's been a fun
Aloha.
time. Aloha.